Howdy, my name is Carnes, and today I'll be giving you a strategic analysis of Lockheed Martin. So just kind of an executive summary of the whole company itself and the presentation I'm about to give you. First, we're going to go over company history. These are going to be things like your background, things like why we're doing the study in the first place, and just kind of give a bit of context behind the company itself before we kind of do a more deep dive into the specifics about it. Then we're going to do an external analysis, which is going to be more of a look at the market around it, the space that the company finds itself in, and a lot of competitors, and a lot of things that are really outside the company's field of view. Then we're going to go into the internal analysis, which is going to be a look at specifically the company, the inner workings of it, the culture, how it's structured, and how its financial situation is. And we're just going to wrap it up with a quick conclusion to kind of put everything that you just listened to all together into a nice little gift. So the first section we're going to look at is company history, and it's going to be broken down into two parts. These two parts are going to be the background, which is just going to give a good overview of what the company is, where it's come from, what it's doing right now. And the second part is going to be a purpose of the study. This is just going to be me telling you why you should listen to this presentation and why you should read this study. So the background, Lockheed Martin itself is actually an aerospace and defense firm specializing in fighter jets, missiles, software, anything really needed for the U.S. military and U.S. government. In fact, the majority of their customer is the U.S. military, so that's more of who they're going toward. Their HQ is located in Bethesda, Maryland, and so that just gives them a close proximity to D.C. and the Pentagon, which really is helpful with any dealings they have, since that's the majority of their business. And so a bit of history. So initially the company was founded on March 15th, 1995. This is brought by a merger between the Lockheed Corporation and Martin Marietta. These were both industry leaders at the time who were both competing with bigger companies like Boeing. And so both of them realized that together they could really bring all their companies together and just have a supremacy in the market itself. And so both these companies actually are really, really old. Dating back to about 10 years after the Wright brothers first flew their planes. And since they've just been in the business the whole time and innovated with it, this shows that how both companies, when they came together, have really had a mastery of the aerospace market and how the market itself operates. So, why I should pay attention to this presentation and read my strategic analysis. So first off, if you have any interest in the company itself, this will tell you about all you need to know about it. The biggest things we're going to do in this presentation, and we're done in the strategic analysis itself, we're just take a deeper look into the company. Instead of just looking at the Wikipedia page, instead of just going on the company website, just seeing the broad strokes, this is more diving deep between the lines and really getting a feel for who the company is, who runs it, how they manage all their issues, how they adapt to situations. And so by doing this, we're going to take a look at the financials, what assets they have, how they've been performing, what their actual worth is in the market, and how they've done in the stock market, since they are a publicly traded company. And so with that, we're going to understand the market. Now, through my research, what I found is that the aerospace defense market is actually incredibly unique and not really like anything I've really studied before. We'll get more into this later, but that was really one of the bigger purposes of the study. That's why the external analysis to me was very interesting, since it's really not like anything you've ever seen before. And so with all this, with the recommendations given at the end, with conclusion and all that, it'll be a good idea to see where the company should go next, first thing I think the company should go next in my recommendations, along with where they're slated to go next, which we will talk about later in the presentation. So first off, the external analysis. The external analysis will be broken down into three different parts. This will be a general environmental analysis, an analysis of the industry itself, and competition analysis. really, as I said before, the external analysis is just going to be not looking at the company itself, but everything surrounding the company. The market itself, which is the ecosystem it lives in, along with the other companies, which act as more the organisms that live within it. So really a big tool that came into play when doing the external analysis was using a PESTEL analysis. Now, as you can see from the figure on the left, the PESTEL analysis is really just a makeup of 6 different characteristics that can make up a market. This is your political, which is what the current political climate is, what laws you have to overtake, which also blends in with legal, and they kind of get a gray line there sometimes. You have your economic, which is what the actual money in the market is, because you can't produce anything too expensive, you can't really produce anything too cheap, because then you end up having a crappy product. Then you have the social, which is more how the customer base feels as a society. Right now you have a lot of sentiment against certain political figures and stuff like that, and so with that, it's very important to know how the culture is in the world with people, with your customer bases, to know how you can market better to their values. And then you have technological. This is probably the most important in this industry, mostly because it's driven by technological advancement and by advancements in technology. Next you have your environmental, which is going to be more how it interacts with the environment itself, what the environment of the market itself is. And then of course there's legal, which I touched on, political, but it's going to be what laws you're constrained by, which vary by country, but with Lockheed Martin being mostly a US based company, it's going to be mostly US laws that is going to govern Lockheed Martin, along with the fact that political is going to be whatever laws passed through Congress or through the executive and judiciary offices. So general environmental analysis, this is broken up into 7 different divisions. You have your demographic segment, economic segment, your political and legal segment, your social and cultural segment, technological segment, global segment, and then we're going to touch on the driving forces in the market. So the demographic segment is really governments. These are companies that are making high-tech military equipment that normal civilians can't buy, so you have a limited customer basis by saying that it's going to be governments. This is mostly true for Lockheed Martin with the US government and whoever the US government sells to, notably the Australian Air Force, Britain, France, Germany. And so these are really the people that you're going to market your product toward. Then you have your economic segment. This is going to be, again, as touched on in the PESTEL analysis, what you can really sell for, who's in the market to buy, who has the money to spend. Then you have political and legal segment, which is also directly derived from PESTEL analysis. And so this is going to be more of your, what the political climate is. If there is a country at war, they're going to have a much more higher demand for military aircraft, military systems, than a country that's at peace. And so then you touch on the social cultural segment, which is as touched on the PESTEL analysis. So this is more of a reflection of the PESTEL analysis and the different parts in it. So the social cultural is going to be, again, more of how society is and what their thoughts are really towards whether they want to pursue a partnership with Lockheed Martin or not. A lot of your anti-war sentiment really would be against this. Luckily for Lockheed Martin, their main contributor is the Department of Defense, which, as being the Department of Defense, is always thinking about warfare. Then you have the technological segment. This, as I touched on before, is key, mostly because this industry is almost driven completely by technological advancement. Those that do better as companies are the ones that have better tech. Then you have the global segment. This isn't really as important for the aerospace industry as it is for other industries. This is mostly because since it's military, since it's a sense of patriotism behind it, since that's part of the marketing behind it, the only countries that use US-produced aircraft are those that really can't produce aircraft for themselves. And so that's why you see an independent aerospace market in US, an independent one in China, an independent one in parts of Europe, an independent one in Russia. all of them kind of staying in their own lane, only marketing to their country of origin and their allies. And so, as I touched on before, the main driving forces are going to be technological advancement, having the ability to sustain and produce to that technological degree, and the ability to market to your customer bases. These all combined really are what drive the aerospace industry. It's mostly making sure the tech is there, producing the tech, and making sure you can continue to produce the tech at the rate at which your customer really wants it. Because even if the tech is there and you can't produce it, or can't produce it at the rate that's needed, you're kind of dead in the water, and no one's going to really be interested in that. So the industry analysis. This is going to be mostly looking at the industry itself, the dominant economic features, the size of the market, the growth rates, trends, and then a 5 forces analysis will follow. So the description of the industry, what's so unique about it is each company really in the aerospace industry has their own specialty. Boeing, for example, specializes mostly in commercial aircraft with some military aircraft, but most of those are different from what Lockheed produces. Lockheed really focuses on fighter jets and cargo jets and systems. And so with all this independence, there's actually coordination. Like, for example, Boeing, who is Lockheed's biggest competitor, produces the H-64 Delta Apache Longbow, which they create the airframe. However, Lockheed actually does the systems and the sensors. So it's very unique how there is a rivalry, but the competition's not really there. Everyone's not afraid to work with each other. There's a lot of collaboration between different companies as to producing the best product, going to market with the best chance. So some of the dominant economic features, again, technology. Technology is always key when it comes to this market. And that's just because of the fact that it's needed. The whole point of it is warfare and getting an edge upon your enemy. So whenever Russia ends up putting out an aircraft that is superior to anything the US has, the immediate demand is find something better than that aircraft. And so this is why technology really drives this whole market. The market size. So the market actually is big, but not really. This is mostly because of the fact that since it is so large and there's a lot of different aircraft producers, but there's a lot of divisions, and each company really has its own division cornered. Like, you could talk about Bell Helicopter, which is aerospace, but they also only produce helicopters, which doesn't really go with Lockheed. You can talk about Boeing, who does a lot of cargo aircraft and a lot of helicopters, and also a lot of commercial craft. Lockheed only really touches some cargo craft and some helicopters. Even then, they don't really put that much into their helicopters. Then you have Lockheed Martin, who is mostly in fighter jets and missiles and other systems. Not many other people produce those, and the Boeing jets that they produce use Lockheed missiles. It's all very relative. It's not hard to find one product that has the top 5 competitors in this industry all working in collaboration on it, which astounds me, but is very good, which I see is a good thing, because although there's not the competition, there is competition, because they're going to be held to a standard by their customer instead of being held to a standard by their competition. And so this really drives the market itself to grow, and really for those that are top to continue to adapt and continue to keep up, because at the moment they don't keep up and someone else can, that person's on top. And so it's just make sure and maintain that supremacy in your lane. So industry trends. So it's more technology. However, for Lockheed, it's going to be more stealth technology, more faster jets, jets that can be in the air longer, jets that can go further. It's just all the general things that you would think a jet could improve on. Or missiles going further, going into space. That's where you have intercontinental ballistic missiles coming into play. It's all just advancing the current technology. That's another thing about the aerospace industry. It doesn't really change until some of the forces change. A good example was Boeing came out with the B-22 Osprey, which was a hybrid airplane helicopter. The moment they came out with that aircraft, it dominated, and now you see a bunch of other companies playing catch up and having their own versions of it. I know Bell Helicopter just got a contract for a bigger version of it. It's just, the markets just continue doing what you have unless you have a breakthrough, and in which case you're in the lead, or someone else has a breakthrough, and in which case you're catching up. And that's just the nature of technology. And so, from here, we're going to move on to the 5 forces analysis. So, 5 forces analysis is composed of the threat of new entrants, the power of suppliers, the power of buyers, power of substitutes, and the intensity of the rivalries. So what you really see is the threat of new entrants. There isn't really a threat of new entrants until they come up with a revolutionary technology that's better than what's out there already. Whenever this happens, that's when you see really the market start to change. For example, before helicopters were a thing, which they were invented in World War II, everyone was focused on planes. The moment helicopters came out, and that technology was available, everyone was scrambled to produce the best helicopters. That's where you see Boeing, Lockheed, Bell Helicopter, all of them. Sikorsky, which is owned by Lockheed, all very much scrambling to create the best helicopter. And so that's a good example, along with, as I touched on earlier, the V-22 Osprey, which is the hybrid. And then of course you have, with Lockheed, their missile systems, intercontinental ballistic missiles. As soon as someone comes out with a step up of technology, it's a game of catch up and improvement. That's all it really is. Until that happens, you just kind of stay in your lane and you produce what you have. That's why there isn't really that much of a threat of new entrants until there is one. And this is just because, honestly, it's very hard to predict when this new entrant and when this new technology will come out. And that's why you have a lot of companies playing catch up. Then you have the power suppliers. The suppliers in this market are kind of limited. This is mostly due to the fact that it's mostly government contracts. There's a lot of power to the buyers, which kind of goes hand in hand with it, being as how the buyer will specify what they want, they will specify what specifications they want, and it's up to the suppliers to really abide by these rules and produce something that is superior to what other companies produce under these same specs. And so you're kind of, as a supplier, kind of slaves to the buyer, since you are really going along with whatever specs they set forth. So the power substitutes isn't really that common, seeing as how the biggest competitor to Lockheed Martin is really Boeing, who has a few fighter aircraft, but in reality, when it comes to the fighter aircraft game, there are 2 aircraft they're building right now, which is the F-35 Lightning and the F-22 Raptor. And both of those are miles ahead of anything else that other competitors are producing, which really shows that there's not really a power of substitutes, because why would you substitute a F-22, which is what's known right now as the finest fighter jet in the U.S. military arsenal, with something like a Boeing F-A-18, which is older, dated, not really a need for, or even an F-15, which I believe is produced by Lockheed Martin. There's not really a need for power substitutes because people want the newest tech, want the newest thing. So why would you substitute the newest thing with the older thing? And that's why there's not really much of a threat of substitutes in this market. And so the intensity of rivalry, as I touched on earlier, it's very unique just because of the fact that really there's rivalry and there's competition, which is present in all markets. However, there's a lot of collaboration. It's not uncommon to see, as I've touched on before, one really good product having multiple companies work on it. Before the F-35 and F-22, Boeing had some of the leading aircraft, and they still do, with the H-64 Apache Delta, which is saying is the finest attack helicopter in the world right now. And it's made by Boeing, the airframe is made by Boeing, but the systems and software is made by Lockheed. And the missiles are made by someone else, parts of the rotor will be made by someone else. It's just, there's a massive collaboration just to produce the best products. And so it kind of makes you think, is this market more driven by profit, as a company really should be, or by more of a passion to produce a great product? Granted, you could say that they're doing profit because of the fact that if Lockheed can produce a better system than Boeing, then they're more likely to lean towards Lockheed. So that's more of the intensity rivalry and the uniqueness of it. So now on to a competition analysis. This is going to be, I'm going to go over it later, but there's strategic group mapping, which is a way to look at your competition. Some of the industry competitors, as I touched on, Boeing, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, etc. Those are their major competitors. However, they each have their own thing they do. General Dynamics is really good with systems. Boeing is good with bigger aircraft, harder aircraft. Northrop Grumman's good, good in a variety of things, but not really anything specific. And then Raytheon is absolutely amazing when it comes to systems and sensors. In fact, a lot of the Lockheed Martin aircraft use Raytheon sensors, which means that it's not necessarily a market of competitors as much as a market of collaborators. And so once you have, again, you have rival anticipated strategic moves, more technology. It's simple as that. The whole market is driven by technological advances, and so with that, it's very obvious what the next person is going to do. Right now, not necessarily specifically, but it's very obvious that they will be pursuing a better technology. So, in summary, it's collaborators, not competitors necessarily. This is shown by working in tandem, working on projects together, and the fact how easy it is and how common it is for that to happen. Really, people have their own, each company has really their own specialization, and other companies work to make it better and get in on the profit from it. So some of the key factors to success in it is keeping your teamwork. It's a good thing to work with your competitors because, for instance, Boeing could produce a far superior attack helicopter than anything Lockheed could produce. That's just the truth of the matter and how it is right now with the technology and their patents. However, Lockheed is in on it with their systems. And so this kind of shows that collaboration is a very key to success when it comes to the industry. Another one, of course, is technological advancement. And this is mostly because of the fact that the newest tech will pretty much always be seen as superior to the older tech, and that will be what people buy. So as I touched on earlier, strategic group mapping. So as you see to the left, this is more of one on the food industry. And so you can see it's broken down by companies that have a limited menu, their product line, and if they have full menu, their product line being broken into limited menus and full menus. And then from there being broken down into high price and low price. And it kind of shows you where each company and all the companies kind of fit on here. Like you can see limited menus with low prices for like your Wendy's, your Domino's, your Burger King, all that. And you have your higher price product lines that are a bit more full, like Olive Garden and Red Lobster, where it seems a bit more fancy versions of the food market. And so this can be applied to any market really, because it just kind of gives you an idea of where each one's niche kind of is. And so this can be not necessarily product line and price, but it can be product diversity, it can be geographic coverage, distribution channels, and really anything you want it to be that you think could give you a good idea of the market. For the aerospace market, it'd probably be something more along the lines of what kind of products they produce, and something very similar to this for how much they produce it, or geographic location actually probably better, since you see most aerospace companies are really divided in geographic regions. The US is not buying any Chinese or Russian aircraft, China's not buying any Russian or US aircraft, and Russia's not going to buy any Chinese or US aircraft. It's as simple as that. And so now we're going to move on to the internal analysis. This is going to be broken down into two parts. An organizational analysis, which looks at the organization of the company in general, and a financial analysis, which obviously looks at the finances. So I'm going to touch on the 7S framework in the next slide, but the organization analysis is really built upon the 7S framework. So the corporate mission for Lockheed Martin is really produce a superior product that's safe. Their mission statement actually says how their main thing is produce products that keep people safe. While this is kind of contradictory for a defense firm, it does help because they keep their products very safe. They make sure the safety of the users at hand, and one could even argue that warfare is a way to secure safety. Some of the products and services, it varies, and we'll talk more about that in structure too, because they have 4 main divisions that they work in, but it's mostly fighter jets, aircraft, software, missiles, anything like that. And as you can see on the left, that's actually one of the prototype ones, which is kind of a rotary aircraft that actually goes and picks up the loads and drops them off other places. It's just a transport terminal that's quick and easy to use. And so this is where you're kind of going in the future. And so part of the services they also offer is they actually have a whole supply chain that they manage themselves. And this supply chain really helps to get maintenance, it helps to get spare parts. All that is done in-house along with a lot of logistics, and it cuts down costs a ton for Lockheed. And so leadership, now this was the part that was very standard. You have your CEO, your COO, your CFO, and then of course it's all done by board of directors with different committees under them. It's all very standard business practice with Lockheed Martin, which is good because it shows that this is a tried and true method of how to run a corporation. And so with the organizational culture, you have something they call full spectrum leadership. This is more of a way and guidelines to make it where leaders respect their employees, where they make sure they're treated well. There's a huge emphasis at Lockheed Martin on HR. They want employees to be happy to come to work, and you see where this can be an advantage because a company that's their biggest competitor, Boeing, had recently, they had strikes where people were refusing to work, and because they didn't want to come to work. However, Lockheed, people are happy to come to work. People take pride in what they do. You're building fighter jets. It's hard not to take pride in it. And so, with this full spectrum leadership, with this is also the fact that Lockheed Martin also instills a sense of everyone is a leader in their culture. This really shows how everyone abides by this full spectrum leadership, how everyone can be involved, everyone's encouraged to put their voice out there, and how everyone's encouraged to treat those under them and their peers with respect and really just take pride in what they do. So continue on structure. As I said, Lockheed Martin's really broken down into different segments. 4 to be exact. Aeronautics, missiles and fire control, rotary missile mission systems, and space systems. Their big ones, aeronautics. This is your fighter jets, your planes, all that. Missiles and fire control, missiles and different ways to defend against missiles, whether this is a giant Gatling gun or another missile being shot at a missile. Then you have your rotary mission systems. This is kind of a minor one. It's more of a miscellaneous kind of pile for them because it really goes into their helicopters, which aren't that big into their market, and mission systems, which is more of your software stuff and such like that. And so with the software being the bigger part of this is because their software is everywhere. It's in helicopters made by the companies, it's in most of their aircraft, it's in a lot of their space systems. And so space systems is pretty self-explanatory. It's a lot of spacecraft, this is a lot of their stuff on the ISS, Hubble Space Telescope. It's just a lot of stuff that happens with NASA and space. Lockheed usually has a hand in it. And so, as I said earlier, you see a lot of their mission systems working against their space systems, and mission systems working in their aeronautics, and also with their rotary. And so this just shows that although these are 4 separate divisions, they work with each other all the time, and they help complement each other and help each other to achieve a certain goal. So it's not like there's 4 divisions that work very separately. They're all very much interconnected, and each one is headed up by its own vice president. So the strategy kind of goes with that full spectrum leadership along with the culture. And this is mostly due to the fact that you're supposed to work hard, make a good product, and treat your fellow employees with respect. And so with this strategy, you see them succeeding because they're producing good products, their employees are having a good time at work. It's showing how really Lockheed is one of the forerunners when it comes to employee satisfaction in the market itself. And so, in a summary of the organizational analysis, you really see the fact that they're well put together. They have been using a very similar system for a long time. Granted, the new leadership system was only put in 2006, but since then, it's worked wonders. Everyone treats everyone with respect. The organization itself is running incredibly smoothly from a people standpoint, from a product standpoint, from a services standpoint. They are doing what they do best in the best way possible. There's really not much more to it. And so from here we're going on to an analysis of the firm resources itself. And the 7S framework, as we touched on earlier. So the 7S framework just kind of points out 7 different parts of a company that need to work together. And as you can see on the left side, shared values in the middle because it's kind of the core idea of it, but all the rest are interconnected and all work together. These are strategy, structure, systems, staff, style, skills, and of course shared values, which is really the key to 7S framework. And so on to the analysis of firm resources. We're going to talk about it later, but the VRIO framework is really key to helping in this. Now, if they're tangible resources, these are all your assets that you can touch. This can be your land, your buildings, items that you have, and currently they have $5.775 billion worth of tangible resources. Your intangible resources, which are your patents, your ideas, all your IC, your intellectual property, you have $3.797 billion worth of it. So as you can see, they have a lot of assets at their disposal, whether it be intellectual or physical. Their capabilities, they are not afraid to outsource. However, they prefer to do things in the house. And with this, although there can be an issue with they're not able to do as good as the competitors, it cuts down costs tremendously, and it's just they are able to run their own systems so much better than going through a third party who would be storing some of their stuff. They try to manage everything themselves, and so this leads to a large amount of capability to produce, a large amount of capability to store, and a large amount of capability to sell. And so really the core competencies and sustainable advantages, which is what sets Lockheed apart from the others, is their products. Simply, they produce the finest of their products. A lot of other companies don't even touch that market, the same way Lockheed doesn't really touch markets that other companies really go into. And this is really where they have their advantage. Until they're going to have the advantage of fighter jets until someone comes along and makes a better fighter jet. The two being fighter jets that I stated are really made by Lockheed, and there's no one really to compete with. It's gotten so much to the point where countries like Russia and Turkey are actually trying to produce missiles made specifically for these aircraft just because of how well they produce and how good they are. Onto the VRIO framework. And so VRIO stands for value, rare, imitable, and organized. And so this is broken down into more of a yes-no kind of decision framework. So as you can see on the graph on the left, is your product valuable? If it's not, then you have a competitive disadvantage. If it is valuable but it's not rare, then you have a competitive parity. If it's valuable, rare, but not imitable, then you have a temporary competitive advantage, and although it is a competitive advantage, it's still temporary. If it is valuable, rare, imitable, but not organized, then it's unused competitive advantage, and that's just a waste. However, if it is valuable, rare, imitable, and organized, then you have a sustained competitive advantage, and this is where Lockheed sits right now, because their jets are valuable, their missiles are not as good as anyone else, so they're rare, it's all imitable, and they are organized so well that there isn't really an issue when it comes to that either. So the financial analysis. So going over it briefly, as you can see on the left, their stock prices aren't great in comparison to the average in the market. However, it's high and they're profitable. So although they may be above the average aerospace firm, I guarantee they're selling more jets than anyone else. And they're still doing well. As you can see, the company itself is valued at $78.3 billion. Their growth has been 19% in revenue in the last decade, and their assets have grown by 62% in the last decade. Especially the assets is a massive number, and this really shows how they're adapting and how they're growing. And although they aren't up to the average in stock price, they're still doing very well. Profitability, especially, as you can see, since the last 10 years, they've had an increase of 24% profit. That's almost a quarter of what they had 10 years ago. That's a massive amount of growth for a company. And so with that, when you analyze the financial strength of it, it's strong. they're doing well in everything. There's not really much worry that no one's going around saying Lockheed Martin is going to go away in the next 10 years now. Until something big technologically comes forth, they're going to be sitting very well. And so with management efficiency, they've been keeping, especially with that leadership framework and leadership ethics they use, their management's very efficient. They have very experienced people from all over from different industries who all contribute to make sure the company does well, and just the fact that they get so many contracts in the Department of Defense, who honestly the government's probably as stringent as you can get, shows that they're doing something right. So from here we'll move on to the SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis, of course, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And as you can see on the left, it kind of goes into a little bit better detail as to what each one actually means. Their strengths, they produce better products than their competitors, which is the biggest thing. They have a large amount of DoD contracts and long-term ones at that, so the profit's not going away anytime soon because of the fact that these are long-term contracts. However, the weaknesses, the biggest one is the fact that they actually rely so much on contracts in the U.S. that I think it's about 66% of their profit comes from U.S. contracts. So although, being an American myself, I hope that the USA doesn't go anywhere anytime soon. If it does, Lockheed's done. This is why one of the opportunities they have is really foreign investment and foreign clients. With these foreign clients, they can really tap a market that they weren't able to tap into before, and really expand throughout the globe. Although they'll never touch China, they'll never touch Russia, there is a very good chance that Europe adopts them. A lot of your South American countries could adopt them. A lot of your Central American countries, African countries, a lot of Middle Eastern countries, Jordan especially, uses Lockheed aircraft. And so that's where, if they expand into here, it's really where opportunity is. The biggest threats are really their competitors. However, these competitors aren't really competitors to touch on, they're more collaborators. So it's not that much of a threat to Lockheed Martin right now until one comes and then puts them on their butt immediately. Because we're not going to be able to really observe it from now, knowing, oh, this company's going to come up and overtake them. It happens so suddenly that it's going to be hard to tell. And so technically the biggest threat is Boeing, since that's their biggest competitor, but at the same time they work together and they very much value each other, so I don't see that being a massive threat. And with their value chain analysis kind of being brought into SWOT analysis, since this is a good place to put it, it kind of goes to the fact that they do everything in-house: logistics, transportation, warehousing. They do a lot of that in-house, so there's a lot of saving money and saving frustration itself by having everything in-house. So some of the recommendations. For the external recommendations, I would say keep an eye on emerging technology. It's so key that you have to probably look every day at least to see if there's any smidget of some technology coming up, because if it does and you're not a part of it, you're left in the dirt in this whole market. And so that's why it's so important to make sure and keep an eye on what emerging technologies there are, to invest yourself into emerging technologies. And another big one is to cement partnerships. Their partnership they have with Boeing is great. Northrop Grumman, their partnership is good. With Raytheon, their partnership is excellent. There's just keep on doing it. What they're doing right now is working. That's why, really, these are very light recommendations, because they've been in the industry a long time. They know how it works, so they're going to be just fine. Now, for the internal ones, keep their contracts. Although I said to look for more ones outside, let's touch on the second point. It's key to have those U.S. military contracts. This is more of a growth than instead of an allocation of current resources. And honestly, keep the culture. With their heavy investment in HR and the fact their employees are happy to be there and they're passionate, that's a very hard thing to find. It's a very hard thing to instill. They can keep that culture. They're going to keep happy employees that love to work and love to see the company itself grow. And that's really a really great asset to have if you have a company. And so in conclusion, as I said, the company is very profitable and performs very well on its own. My recommendations are going to be just keep doing what you're doing. It's working incredibly well. As I said, the market's incredibly unique. It's collaborators instead of competitors, and the fact that everyone has their own lane baffles me. It's instead of everyone going for the best Oreo knockoff, or everyone going for the best fast food chain in the South, which is Whataburger. They are keeping in their lane, and they're producing what they produce and working with their competitors, which is why this is such a unique market and very interesting to learn about. And so, as such, an honest second statement, the products are distinct. No one's producing a fighter jet marketed to the U.S. and Western countries as good as Lockheed Martin is. It's just not there. And the fact that their products are so distinct, and also their missiles are so distinct that no one's really touching them right now, speaks volumes to how well they produce and how well they manage their partnerships and their relationships with their competitors. So finally, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching. I know it's a long presentation, and if you read the strategic analysis, I know that was a handful itself. All the references for all my data and all of the citations and labels for all of my graphs and such and images I use can be found on my strategic analysis itself. And overall, I'd just like to say thank you very much for paying attention to this video, and thank you very much, Dr. Uche, for a great experience in learning about a market that otherwise I wouldn't have known anything about, and I honestly find very fascinating. Thank you.